Hey folks, Eric RagingLevine here with another YouTube video about Commander. We are done with the reviews of Ikoria and Commander 2020. Those are all set for now. What we've got here instead is a Commander deck tech featuring one of the newest commanders on the scene, somebody you'll be able to play with when Ikoria drops. I'm talking, of course, about Winota, Joiner of Forces. Let's take a look. Alrighty, folks, this is Winota, Joiner of Forces, a new commander from Ikoria 2, a red and a white for a 4/4 legendary human warrior. Whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn. Put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So I was thinking about creating a token deck with Winota. Specifically, I want to make a lot of non-human tokens and play only human creature cards. I did a little Frank Karsten style math with the hypergeometric calculator, and I discovered that if you play 23 human creature cards in your 99, then if all your cards are still in your library, you have an 80% chance of hitting a creature, a human creature specifically, when you attack and get the Winota trigger. Obviously, as you pull humans out of your deck, this percentage will go down, but you want that percentage to be nice and high early on so you can flood the board with really strong humans and overwhelm your opponents with them alongside the tokens. Not really the flavor win that Winota is looking for, of course. She is looking to team up beasts and non-beasts, but sometimes in Commander, you gotta find the edges and take what you can get. Alrighty, folks, let's take a look at some of the humans I've chosen for this deck, starting with these 4 powerhouses. We have Captain of the Watch, Geist Honored Monk, Seasoned Pyromancer, and Knight Captain of Eos. These 4 have one job to do, and that job is to put some non-human creature tokens into play. That way, if we hit them off of the Winota trigger, we can put even more non-humans into play and continue to snowball off of that trigger. They're also a really good start in terms of getting tokens onto the battlefield. Geist Honored Monk was the inspiration for this deck. When I was reviewing Ikoria, I thought immediately of Geist Honored Monk because it generates these white spirit creature tokens with flying that are easy to get in with, and additionally, it grows based on how many creatures you have. Pretty much the perfect emblematic card for this deck. 4 more cards that really help out here. Pia and Kieran Nalaar, Pia Nalaar, Blade Splicer, and Lena Selfless Champion. Pia and then Pia and Kieran all create Thopters, which are another great type of creature that we can use to fly over and get more Winota triggers. Lena does a great job of protecting our board, and Blade Splicer is just a nice, efficient creature for the early game. Not all of our creatures can generate tokens, though. Some of them have to serve other purposes. I tried to focus on humans with powerful enters the battlefield abilities in this deck, and so we have these 3 creatures that are basically removal. Banisher Priest, Palace Jailer, and Fiend Hunter, all exile creatures opponents control as long as they are around to keep those creatures at bay. This can be a really nice way to remove a blocker or a problem creature in the middle of combat with a Winota trigger or just from your hand. I also really like Palace Jailer here because with all of the tokens we're going to have, it should be easy to take the Monarch back if we are to lose that Monarch token. Next up, we have Silverblade Paladin and Bruce Tarl, Boorish Herder, 2 creatures that come down and give something double strike. I really like these, especially because the Winota trigger gives the creature indestructible the turn it enters the battlefield off of that trigger. So Silverblade Paladin is going to stick around and stay paired with something. Bruce Tarl is going to stick around to attack again, theoretically, as long as these creatures don't get removed before your next combat. We have some more miscellaneous humans here with triggered abilities. Direfleet Daredevil, letting us leverage opposing instants and sorceries that have already been cast or milled or put in the graveyard. Otherwise, Knight of the White Orchid, helping with a little bit of catch-up mana acceleration. What would a token deck be without anthems? We've got 3 creatures here that pump up our attackers. We've got Kongming, Sleeping Dragon, Banalish Marshal, and then Instigator Gang, which, if no spells are cast in a turn, turns into the much more merciless Wild Blood Pack. Instigator Gang and Wild Blood Pack do only buff the front half of our creature's stats, but still worth it once you get Wild Blood Pack onto that side. It's much stronger. Not all of our token generators can be enters the battlefield monstrosities. These two are a little more subdued. Loyal Apprentice generating a Thopter each turn as long as you have Winota in play. Silverwing Squadron generating a Knight token or many Knight tokens as long as you get to attack with it, which you should be able to do theoretically if it hops into play off of Winota. And here we are rounding out our human count with these 3 utility humans here. Mentor of the Meek providing a lot of card draw with our small creatures as well as our many tokens. Mother of Runes protecting some of our key creatures. And Masako the Humorless letting us block with our tapped creatures, which I think is a pretty cool inclusion here. Alright, that's all 23 of our humans, and now we are going to move into our non-creature spells, starting with some repeatable token generators. Of course, we are going to need other token generators other than just these human creatures we have. Let's start with an enchantment and 2 planeswalkers. Assemble the Legion, of course, making more and more soldiers every turn. Chandra Flamecaller making some hasty elementals. They don't stick around, but they do a good job of triggering Winota. And Elspeth Sun's Champion making soldiers and doing a good job of clearing the board of more powerful creatures our opponents might have, while still ramping up to that emblem. Here are some of our more powerful non-repeatable token generators. We have Finale of Glory, Secure the Wastes, and Decree of Justice, all fantastic X spells, some more abjectly powerful than others. Finale of Glory and Decree of Justice could generate some 4/4 white angel creature tokens. Secure the Wastes at instant speed, a great way to create a board, untap, play Winota, and go to town, get a lot of triggers. Next up, we have some cheaper one-shot effects. Dragon Fodder and Hordling Outburst making some Goblin tokens. SRAM's Expertise making 3 servos and letting us cast another card from our hand. Pretty powerful stuff, not by itself, but alongside Winota, as well as some of our anthems. Speaking of anthems, obviously with Winota in play, our non-human tokens are very powerful in terms of putting things in play, but we won't always have her in play, and even when we do, it's nice to have some ways to pump up our creatures. Force of Virtue and Spear of Heliod, much more in line with the generic anthem theme. Glory of Warfare making our creatures more powerful on the attack and tougher when we're blocking or when our opponents may be casting sweepers. Eldrazi Monument, an incredible card here. We're going to have a lot of tokens. We can sacrifice a token to Eldrazi Monument to keep our creatures flying, indestructible, and huge. We've got a few more ways to pump up our creatures here. Cathar's Crusade, of course, everyone's favorite accounting nightmare, filling the board with dice and just making things incredibly complicated, but it's a very powerful card. Akroma's Memorial, adding all kinds of nonsense abilities to all of our creatures, and the not often seen Rally the Peasants. I like this one because of the flashback. Sometimes you can use this as an instant trick to surprise people out of your hand, and if people forget about it in the graveyard, even better. It really justifies itself as a trumpet blast by having flashback. Otherwise, I don't think this card would be worth playing here. A couple more ways for us to augment our token generation here. We have Anointed Procession that doubles up tokens, and Divine Visitation, which has been doing work for me in the Arena Cube, helping us make 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance instead of goblins or soldiers or servos or what have you. It's important that they are not humans, and that's why we have Divine Visitation. Well, really it's because we make 4/4s. We like 4/4s. Of course, Commander is a format full of wraths. People are going to be trying to destroy our board, and if we don't want to fall super far behind, we're going to need some ways to protect it. Make a Stand, Boros Charm, and Rootborn Defenses, all pretty traditional ways of protecting the board in a Boros deck. When you've got a lot of tokens, you want to keep them safe. Flawless Maneuver, a new card out of Commander 2020. If you control your commander, you can cast it without paying its mana cost and protect your board from a wrath effect, a lot of damage, things like that. Note that these don't stop cards like Settle the Wreckage from making our board into wreckage, so keep those in mind as you declare your attacks. Of course, protecting our whole board is well and good, but we want to protect Winota as well. That's why we have these 3 pieces of equipment: Champion's Helm, Lightning Greaves, and Darksteel Plate to make her a little harder to kill, force our opponents to work harder to get rid of our commander. The deck is not dead without the commander. We're not dead in the water like some decks are, but it is really important to have Winota for the theming of the deck and to trigger all of those humans into play, so keeping her alive is not a must, but it is still very important. Of course, we have to have some removal here. Swords to Plowshares and Winds of Abandon taking care of some of the targeted removal. Winds of Abandon also sort of stretching out into the Wrath territory, but keeping our board alive. If we do need Wraths, Hour of Reckoning and Hour of Revelation, both great here. Hour of Revelation taking care of things when they get out of hand, whereas Hour of Reckoning leaves our tokens around to play again in another combat. Removal isn't just for creatures. We also need to deal with problematic artifacts and enchantments, and that's where Crush, Contraband, and Wear Tear come in. Both very mana efficient, very flexible options that help us get rid of problem permanents. I couldn't bear to leave us with Mentor of the Meek as the only viable card draw option in this deck. That's why I've slotted in both Skullclamp and Idol of Oblivion. Skullclamp, of course, a classic selection for token decks. Idol of Oblivion, a newer entry to that field, drawing you a card each turn as long as you create a token. Speaking of obligatory inclusions, let's talk mana rocks. We need ways to make sure that we have mana for our X spells or to cast our commander later in the game after some commander tax has been applied. Let's start with these signets, Boros Signet and Arcane Signet, both easy inclusions. Arcane Signet, of course, coming back in the Commander 2020 precons. We also have a couple of other low-cost mana rocks, Mind Stone and Talisman of Conviction here alongside Commander Stalwart Soul Ring. Moving on to the lands, we have 2 creature lands to start us off, Needle Spires and Mishra's Factory, neither one of them a human, so great for triggering Winota. We also have Windbrisk Heights, since we'll be attacking with 3 or more creatures quite a lot of the time. A free spell is always nice. Strip Mine and Ghost Quarter here to deal with problematic non-basics. We wouldn't want to be stuck behind a Glacial Chasm or something like that. These lands help take care of cards like those. I'm running 38 lands in this build, so I wanted to make sure we have enough cycling lands so that when we draw them later in the game, we can toss them aside in favor of more powerful, more useful cards, but we can still play them in the early game if we really need to make that land drop. So we've got Forgotten Cave and Secluded Steppe, along with the less often seen Deserts of the Fervent and True. And those deserts have made the cut because we've also got Scavenger Grounds here as some graveyard hate. It's important to have some graveyard hate, and we mostly don't have any outside of Scavenger Grounds, so adding a couple of extra deserts really makes this one count. Now we move into the mana fixing. We have Boros Garrison, Boros Guildgate, and Sacred Foundry to round out the guild theme fixers. Temple of Triumph, Battlefield Forge, and Sunbaked Canyon as more dual lands, as well as Clifftop Retreat, Windscarred Crag, and Command Tower to complete the cycle and just get us more lands that make the colors that we need most of the time. Round that out with some mountains and plains, and you've got yourself a Winota deck. Alrighty, that is it for our Winota Joiner of Forces deck tech today. If you liked this, please hit all the good buttons on this channel. Make sure you subscribe so that you can see more sweet Commander deck techs in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.